Hi, Ben here from Visual Dev FM, and in this video, I'm going to show you how you can make a random item generator. Um, I've had a couple people ask me about this. How can I show, an item on a page, like a collection item, and then click a button, and then get a random item that's different than what I just had. And so, typically, what people try to do is they try to come into a project and maybe they go to their homepage and they set a collection list and they design this and they have a button that's a little JavaScript that reloads the page with an animation. And then on the collection list, what happens is they choose the sort order to be random and shuffle. And technically you think, oh, well, that should work. But here's the problem. If I don't go to the specific, I'm just going to remove this here and go to the home page. If I reload this page over and over and over again, I keep getting the same item. Why is that? Well, with Webflow, what they do is every time you publish your site, it gets cached. So the site gets cached for CDN delivery. So in order to make your site load really quickly, it gets cached and it's not pulling and checking every time. So if you wanted this to change, it would change if I went in and published the site again. But unfortunately, reloading will not get me a new item. It won't do that. But if I go to what I had set up before, you'll see I can click this and it's going to change the item. And if I click it again, it will change the item. How can I set this up to where it works for whatever you're doing, whatever random item you're generating? Well, I'm going to walk you through that. So what I want to do is I want to set up a random quote generator. So let's start here. I've got a collection and I've called it quotes, and I have name, slug, quote, author, author image. Oh, and then I'm going to add in a link, author link, so we can give them credit. Okay. I'm going to save that collection. And in a Google Sheet, I have all of my quotes. So these quotes are all from the same person, somebody I really like following on Twitter. And I really think his quotes are inspirational, inspiring, and motivating. And so I've just given them names of quotes 1 through 20. You can do whatever, right? But we need to get a slug here. Now, Webflow can automatically create this for us, but we're going to use the slug to help randomize. So I need to get this working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the slug, and I'm going to automate this no-code tool with we're using a formula in Google Sheets. So I'm just going to say equals lower. And then I'm going to use another command here. I'm going to use substitute. And so I'm going to substitute A2, which is my name. And then I'm going to substitute a space with a dash. And then I'm going to close that substitute and close the lower. And so now I have a slug. So what I've done is I've said I want to get rid of the capitals here. I just want it to be all lower. And then I'm going to substitute this space here with a dash, which is typically how Webflow does it. Spaces or dash become dashes. And you could also substitute quotation marks, apostrophes, anything else that you might have in there. But I've got this. And so now what I can do is I can just literally drag this down for all of my quotes. And you'll see I get a slug now. And then to make this easy, what I want to do, we'll come back to this. So now I need to create my item. So now I've got quote 1, I've got a slug, I've got the quote, I've got who it's by, I've got the image of that person, and I've got the website. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file, I'm going to download this as a CSV. I'm going to come back to my project here, and I'm just going to import these items. So let's grab our download here. And that first one is a header, so let's map these fields. We're going to map this to the name. This gets mapped to the slug. We're going to map the quote to the quote, which is a rich text field. We're going to map the quote by to the author. We're going to map this column to the author image, and then we'll map this to the author link. Perfect. So now we need to import 20 items. Should just take a second here because this isn't a large spreadsheet or a lot of data. So boom, 20 of 20 items published. Now, we need to do a little bit of design work. So I'm going to close this out, and then I've got a Lottie file that I want to use. I downloaded, so I'm going to grab it because it's something that I'm going to take advantage of. And then I want a cool, so I'm going to go to Google Fonts, and then I want to look for handwritten fonts. So categories, I'm just going to uncheck all of these, and handwritten fonts. So let's just take a peek here and see if we can find a cool handwritten font that we might want to use. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to use this for the signature. So probably a really good way to do this would be to do the, yeah, so now we can see what a signature might look up. Hey, that's pretty cool. Shadows into light. I like that. Caveat works. We'll just keep looking here for just a second. I probably should not be doing this because I'm kind of a font nerd and I just want to keep looking to get exactly what I want. Ooh, I like rock salt too. I think that's really good. Let's do rock salt. Looks like somebody signed it with a pen. So I'm going to go into my project settings and I'm going to go to fonts. I'm just going to type rock salt. There it is. I'm just going to add that font. Hey, now we got it. And then I'm going to jump back into the designer. Okay, so let's design now. Let's do a little bit of work. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to our quotes template. And then so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a div, and I'm going to call it my quote wrapper. Okay, and then I'm going to set the width to 100%, height to 100 VH, which will make it as tall as the screen. And I'm going to set it to flex. And then I'm going to put in another div right here. Oh, and then I'm going to set this to center on my quote wrapper. And I'm going to call this quote content. And then what I want to do is I want to put in some text. And in fact, probably should be a heading. So let's do a heading. And let's get the text from... Actually, what we need to do here is we need to do rich text. So let's do rich text. And let's get this from the quote. So now we see our quote here, which is really neat. And then what we want to do is we want to say this quote content. I want to set a width. I don't want it to be, let's say max width 40%. I don't want it to be any wider than that. And then what we'll do here is on our quote content, we'll pick a font. And so, Lato is really good. We could do Open Sans. Let's do Droid Sans. I really like that. And then so I'm going to make this unitless. We'll make it 1.5. And then I'm just going to make the font a little bigger, right? And we don't want it to be wider than this, right? Like this is as wide as I want it to be, 40% here on the page. So, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a text block. Actually, what I want to do is I want to delete that. I'm going to put in a div, and I'm going to call this quote author wrapper. And then I'm going to flex this as well. So I'm going to put in a div, and I'm going to actually on here I'm going to make this justify left. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say this is author image, and let's give it a set width and height. So let's say it's 40 by 40, and maybe that is a little small. So we'll do this, and then we'll say give it a background image. We'll cover it. We'll center it, and then what we'll do is we'll get the background image from the author image. So now we have a background image or an author image, and then what I want to do actually is I want to set this. I want it to be round. So I'm going to say the radius is 50%. So now I have an author image. And then I'm going to add, 10, actually let's say 20 pixels of space there. And then I'm going to put in some text. And then let's get this from the author. So now we see who is this quote is by. And I'm going to call this author name. And I'm going to set this to the font that we used, the rock salt. And then I'm actually going to make this just maybe a little smaller. And then the wrapper here, I'm going to put a little padding on and put a little margin on. And then let's give it a top out. We'll give it a border on the top. And then there's a color that I want to use. It's a blue. And so I'm just going to paste that in here. We'll make that line blue. Perfect. Give it a little more padding. Okay. And then actually what I might want to do is I'm just going to put in a div. And I'm going to drag both of these. Actually, put this up here. I'm going to drag the image and the name in here. And then move this back to display block. And I'm actually going to make this display flex. And just like that. And then I'm going to convert this div block to a link block. And we'll make we'll say for this, we'll make the text decoration. We'll just say a rename. We'll call this author link. Okay. And then what we want is we want text decoration none. We could make it, in fact, I should have, if I use this blue, let's add it as a global color, create. But we might keep this black here. And then a little padding. And then we'll say on hover, let's just give it a background of something really light. And maybe we'll give this rounded corners. So now, we see who it's the quotes by. And then maybe we'll just make this font a little bigger. Okay. So now we have a quote. We have who this is. We have attribution for the quote. And then this link, we will get the URL. We'll say it's from the author link, and we'll link to their site. So now we have this quote, right? This works really well. And so maybe what we want to do is we would like to, let's come into quote content here. And let's say that this is relative. And then let's put a text block in here. And let's say that this is absolute. And let's do quote here. And then let's change the font on this. So let's select something that's got a little different looking quote marks here. Maybe something more traditional. Don't see anything. Let's look here. Come back and let's say custom. Actually, let's just say, and we don't want handwriting. Kind of want them all. Let's make the size just a little bigger. We'll find a font we can use here. Yeah, like this catamaran. So let's jump back into my project here. And let's go, we'll call this text block. Let's rename the class. We'll call it quotation marks. And we could use an image for this too, but in an effort to save some time, we'll just do this. Let's go back to project settings and let's go to fonts. Let's say catamaran. Perfect. And I want some of these heavier fonts as well. So, and then let's go back into the designer. Well, we've added it here. And then we'll jump back into our template page because that's where these are at. We'll say that this is catamaran. Perfect. And then we'll actually make this quite big. Okay, and then maybe we'll make these our blue color, and maybe we'll fade them out just a little bit. And we will say that it goes in the top right hand corner, and then just like this. So we just give it a little bit of a background style. Okay. And maybe we make it a little more transparent. Yeah, like that. Then that way it doesn't have to be so far off. So hope you're staying with me. Okay, so now we have a little style to it. It's probably not great, but it's something here. Okay, and then quote content, we're going to put an embed tool here. So embed element. So we're going to say, a href equals. So we're just putting in a link, and we're going to put in, a hashtag, I guess a pound symbol, number symbol. So it's going to link to nothing. And we're going to call it class equals, we'll say button, because that's the class we're going to create. And we're actually going to give it a combo class of wButton, which is a default Webflow class, which we want to use. And then we're going to say on click, we're going to do some JavaScript. So let's equals, and let's come in here. And we're going to say set timeout. So what we're doing is we're creating a delay, and we're going to say on timeout, our function is going to be called open site, just like that. And our delay is going to be 3 seconds, so just like this. And then we'll close this, and then we'll put in our, actually, I don't know what this is doing here. I'm not thinking very straight. Okay, put our closing quotation marks, just like that, so we have an on click. And then we'll close that tag, and we'll say, get another quote. Okay, and then we'll say a, just like that, /a. So now we have this button, get another quote. It's kind of large, but it's there and in charge. So what we could do is we could actually come here and say button. So we'll give this a class of button, and we can change the font size on this just a little bit, so it gives us a way to style it. We'll make the background color the blue we're using, and then on hover, actually let's do this. Let's go back to this, and let's give it a border too of blue, and then let's and then on hover, let's make the background transparent and the font blue, just like that. So if we go back to none, when we hover over these, just like that. So get another quote. In fact, what we should probably do is invert that. So we could, we use some, we'll make this 10. And because we use some rounded edges, then we'll get rid of that. And we will make the, just like that. And in fact, this border should probably be not so thick. So we'll make it 2. And then on hover, we'll fill it and make this white. Okay. So now when we preview it, and we say get another quote. Okay, that looks good. I don't love these quotation marks though, so I'm gonna get rid of those. I know that's probably, but I just like that. And then I don't like the way this is down here, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this button. I'm gonna exit, Command X. I'm gonna go over here and create a new page. Call it style. I'm gonna set it to draft. And then I'm gonna paste this button here. That way, if I need to style this button, I can find it there. But for now, I can jump back to my collection template page, and here it is. So really, in order to make this a little bit better, what I could do is set this back to flex, and then I could move this embed up into here, and then we could set it to, start and finish. So that way we have who it's by and a button to get another quote. I actually like that, and that looks really good. So, so now we have quote, we have a button to get another quote, and we have a link to whoever said that quote. So, perfect. Now, how do we randomize this? So, I have some JavaScript that I wrote earlier. So, what I'm going to do is show that to you here. I'm going to just copy it, and I'm going to paste it in. So I took some of this from a Stack Overflow post, and then I redid some of it. But essentially, what we're saying is we have a variable called links, and these are the links. We're going to change those. And we have a function called OpenSite, which we called in our embed with our button. It's going to randomize this and round it, and then we're going to construct the link so it can be open. So right now it's HTTPS, and then plus our variable of links, which is the random one we get here, and then we're going to window location. We're going to open that link. So essentially, what we're doing is when we click the button, we're waiting 3 seconds, and then we're going to open a random link here. So how do we really make this work? We're going to have to publish this real quick, and we're going to open up this specific page, and we're going to copy this address. We're going to come back in here, and instead of just HTTPS, we're going to put in this link, and then we're going to remove quote 3 because that's a specific quote. So now our base link is our link to our site with including the directory to the collection, and then we're going to pull a random one of these and put at the end of it. So how do we get this? So real easy. Let's go back to our quotes page, and let's do some more visual developing on in a spreadsheet. So how would we do this? We would concatenate essentially. So we'd say equals, and then I had to do some Googling to make sure this was right, but it's character, and we're going to say 34 because that's the character we want. That's a quote. We're going to say and we'll say this field right here, B2, and we'll say and character 34 again, and then we'll say and in quotations we want that. So now we get the slug in quotes with a comma afterwards, and we'll just pull this down, and so character 34 is the quotation marks. So and the reason you can't just type those in is because typically, just like you see here, I put the character I want in quotation marks, and when you have to wrap that in quotation marks, it breaks everything. So if you put a quotation inside quotations, it just doesn't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down and just select all of these, and we're going to copy, and we're going to come back over to our site, and we're going to go into the before body, and we're going to select all of these right here, and then we're just going to paste. So what I'm going to do is take all of these, and I'm just going to tab it over where they're all in a line. So these are all of my, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lose this last apostrophe or last comma since there's nothing after that. And so now we have all of our slugs that exist, and we're going to save. So let's publish this and see if it works. So if it works, what should happen is when I click this button, I should get sent to a different quote. So I'm on quote 3 now. I'm just going to count to 3 seconds, and then it's going to run. And now I'm on quote 6. And then if I click it again, it's going to count to 3 seconds, and it's going to run. And now I'm on quote 5. So this seems really hard to read. I don't know. let's make this smaller. Yeah, like that maybe. And then let's actually give this a width instead of a max width. Let's give it a width of 40%. Okay, boom. All right, so save it. So it's working. We're getting a random link. So our JavaScript works. You know, it's working like we would want it to. And so now it's just kind of making it look a little fancier. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in a div. And in this div, I'm just going to call this loading animation. In fact, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this click animation. So if I could spell animation. Okay, so now I have this here, and then I'm just going to set this to fixed to cover the whole page. I'm going to say width 100%, height 100 VH, and then what I want to do is I want to give it a z-index, something a little higher, so I'll say 100. And then I'm going to give it a background color of white. So now it has erased everything else here. Then I'm going to flex it, and I'm going to say put another div. I'm going to call this animation wrapper. Actually, I'll call this click animation wrapper. Okay, perfect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my files. I'm just going to drag my loading animation in here. Perfect. And yeah, a little loop. So now we look at it. That's what it looks like. It's loading. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it initially to display none, so we can't see it. So here it is. And then what I'm going to do is take this button, and I'm going to put an element trigger on. I'm going to say mouse click tap, and let's start an animation. And we'll say new timed animation. So we'll call this click animation. And then what I want to do is I want to start here. I want to do a hide show, set it to initial state, and set it to display none. Something we want to do. And then I'm going to say opacity, set it to the initial state, display none. And then I'm going to hide show it. So I'm going to show it as flex. And then I'm going to make the opacity all the way up to 100 there. So, and then we'll just make that duration 4. And we'll just do a basic ease in so it looks like this. Perfect. And so now, if I publish this and refresh it, I've got a quote here, and if I click get another quote, it goes to a loading animation, and it brings me a new quote. Pretty cool. So we're on the right track, but I could make this a little smoother. So how I could do that is I could add just one more div to the page. And so I'm just going to throw a div in, and I'm going to call this first load div. And then actually I'm going to go back one time here, and I'm going to say right here, get another quote. Okay. And on this click tap animation, I'm going to click here, and then let's get in here to opacity. Then I'm going to select that element, and I'm going to say opacity to 0. We'll set this duration to 3, and maybe we'll wait. If the whole thing takes 2 seconds or 3, we're waiting 3 seconds. Maybe we'll wait 2 seconds here. So that fades out. So we're going to fade this animation out. Then the page will reload. And then we're going to take this first load div, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say fixed, and we'll set this to take up the whole page. Give it a width of 100%, height of 100 VH, and then let's give it a z-index again of maybe 100, and then we'll give it a background color of white. And then what I'm going to say is, let's give a page trigger, so a page load, and we'll say start an animation, and we're going to create a new one. In fact, wait, let's see if I'm in the right spot here. I'm not, so let's delete this. We're going to start an animation when the page starts loading, and let's call this page load. And then we'll take this white div here, and we'll say hide show. So initial is just block, and opacity is 0, or is full. And we're going to set both of these to initial display states. Initial state, set as initial state, set as initial state, perfect. And then we're going to take this and we're going to say, okay, opacity, take us down to 0, and we'll just do this maybe in 0.3 seconds, and we'll make it ease in. And then we're going to set the hide show display to none. So now when the page loads, it kind of fades in. All right. So now I think we've got it. If we refresh this, okay, we say get another quote. This fades in, animation fades out, a new quote fades in. Get another quote. Animation fades out, another quote fades in. So now we're randomly generating quotes from the CMS. Pretty fun. And then, other things that you could do here is you could, come in here and put a social share button on here, so people could share this quote on their favorite social network or whatever. But no matter what you want to randomly generate, this is a great way to do it. If you wanted to, you could, design your home page. So we could do something similar here. So we could come in here and just put a div, and we'll say, call this homepage wrapper, or homepage div. And then we'll set this to 100% and 100 VH. And then we'll make it flex, and we'll do center, put in a div, and then you could do something very similar here. So you could, we could really quickly, we could come back over here to our quotes template, and first load div, I'm going to hide this real quick. So we could copy this, so I'm going to copy that, and then first load div, I'm going to show that back up, and then I'm going to go to my script down here, and I'm just going to copy it as well. Okay, so now if I come back to the home page, I could put an embed in here, and I could, we could say, instead of get a quote, we could say generate, since they haven't seen a quote yet, generate a quote. And then down here in our collection template, down here we could, in our home page, is this the home page settings? Okay, home page, we could just put in our same script. So now, we could put in a message, but we could essentially come here and say generate a quote, and then you'll notice, oh, it waits 3 seconds and it gives me a quote. Probably not what I want to do. So, I could come in here and just say, okay, let's remove this set timeout, and let's just say the first time, just generate a quote. So we'll save this. And then now if we go back to the home page, click generate a quote. Oh, we broke something. What did we break? Let's take a peek. One click, open site. What did I do wrong? Oh, it should be this, shouldn't it? Yep, there it is. And now we generate a quote. So we could put a message in here. And so, in fact, if we come back over here, one of the things that we did in our quote wrap, we called it a quote wrapper. So I'm actually going to come back home, And in this div, I'm going to give it the same quote wrapper. That way, actually, it was not the right one. It was quote content, wasn't it? Quote content, yeah. And that gives the button the same look as we had before. We could put in, a heading, and we could say, welcome to our quote generator site. And then we maybe put in a paragraph, which this one we'd probably want to make that a little smaller. We could say, click the button below to get your first quote. So now, if we come back again, publish that. Now we have this, and we can click. We get a quote, and now we can just keep generating quotes. So if you wanted to pull facts or quotes or whatever it is, the random object you want to grab, you can have that in the CMS and generate that. So what I changed here was since I don't have set timeout, I put in our function an open and closing parenthesis and the semicolon there, and so that we can run that function. And then I included this script at the bottom of both pages. And so one thing to keep in mind here is if you went and created another quote and it was quote 21, you would have to come to both places and say, quote, 21, and add that in. And so that way that it's there. I know that's kind of a pain in the rear end, but it does allow you to randomly generate things, do like a random quote generator or a random whatever generator with Webflow. So something to keep in mind that you'll have to do, but this was just a quick way to hopefully show you how to do this. I'll make sure that links to the code that I'm using are available to you, and then I'll make this spreadsheet available as well, so you can kind of have the formulas that I was using, and you can jump in and grab those. Shouts to Kevin for the awesome quotes and awesome content. You should go follow him on Twitter. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll do the best we can to walk you through whatever you might be dealing with when you're trying to put this together.